I have to be quick. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. Go to your children right now. Kiss them. Hold them for as long as you can. That's all there is. Right now.
Hello once again, watchers of Good Movies. My name is Nick Pell, and this is my review of the Cloverfield Paradox. This is not a review which I was really expecting to be putting out this soon. I thought in April at the earliest is when this thing was going to be released. And no, this studio sold the rights to the film to Netflix. They put it out right after the Super Bowl, and so I sat down and watched this right after the Super Bowl. And so let's talk about it. Now, this is the third film in the Cloverfield franchise. It is going to be a franchise because there's a supposedly fourth film which has been filmed and is due out in October sometime. The first Cloverfield film came out approximately 10-ish years ago, and we had 10 Cloverfield Lane 2 years ago now, and that was fantastic. And so a lot of people were very, very hyped and lots of anticipation surrounding the third Cloverfield film. And so we finally have it released. Was it as good as the other two? Now, this one is a prequel to the original Cloverfield film, and we basically to get a general sense or an idea of how the whole Cloverfield monsters on Earth, essentially, epidemic started to happen. Long story short, the Earth is slowly running out of resources, they're running out of power. Different countries like Russia, China, the US probably are going into an oil crisis, an oil war, where basically the last great powers of the world are basically at war over oil so that they can keep their countries mobile and energized and things of that sort. And you see the effects of this in the first couple shots of the film, where you see just people in line for a gas station because they need oil, and you see a blackout happen. And so the various countries of the world send their top people up into the space station, which has a particle accelerator, not like the Flash, in it, which is supposed to generate this unlimited new source of energy, which will allow the Earth to continue to function normally for many years to come. The problem is they have to figure out a way to make it work, and so they spend approximately 2 years up in the space station trying to figure out how to make this thing operate correctly, while down below countries are basically gearing up for war. And so when they do finally make this thing operate correctly, weird things start to happen on board the ship, and they realize we might not be in the same spot as we used to be, aka we're not in Kansas anymore. And believe it or not, that's the first 10 minutes of the movie. Now, this is a very star-studded cast. You're going to recognize a lot of faces throughout the course of this film. I'm not going to go through all the actors because that would take a long time, but there are very good performances throughout the course of this movie. The special effects also look really, really cool, from the effects of outer space to the weird ongoings which happen on the ship as the events take their course. It all looks very, very good. It's very, very neat to see displayed on screen. But what definitely makes at least the first half of this film stand out is these weird occurrences which are going on within the ship. We see it affect one of the members of the crew with his eye moving in weird places and seeming to hear voices in his head. We see it where another member gets their arm trapped in a wall and it basically gets ripped off, but there's no bleeding. It's just basically like it was never there, and you see the internal parts of the arm, and there's no pain or anything. And then there's another point where you find just a random woman in a wall of the spaceship, just with cords and stuff running through her body. And yeah, it gets weird really early on, and it is a very bloody film at some points too. There are some bloody and gory scenes, so just know that going in if you're not really a big fan of that. This is basically what would be an R-rated film, I would think. And while the first half did really make me really excited to see what this film is going to do, how it's going to make this universe of Cloverfield just feel a lot more vast and really exciting, instead potentially, I don't know, whatever the fourth one is going to be, hopefully a continuation of 10 Cloverfield Lane to some degree. The second half is really just generic, and it feels just like a Lost in Space type of film. It reminded me a lot of Life without the evil alien creature on board trying to kill everybody, because eventually the weird occurrences just kind of stop happening for the most part, and it just kind of becomes a very generic space film where you have a bunch of survivors in a space station trying to survive and find their way back to Earth, and it just gets kind of dull and just kind of boring, honestly, from that point onward. It also doesn't help that the eventual antagonist or villain of the film is just kind of bland. We don't really get to learn any of their backstory, why they're doing what they're doing. We just kind of have them in the background after they're discovered for the majority of the film, and then they basically go evil on everybody with no real explanation for why. And there is a side plot set on Earth which does show off a little bit of the beginnings of the Cloverfield film. We get to see a shadow of the monsters which are walking around, the fire, we see destruction everywhere. And then we get to see kind of a resemblance of the bunker in 10 Cloverfield Lane. But we never really see any firm connections to any characters or anything like that. We never see Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character or anything like that show up in this film. I really would have liked to see those things take place and see maybe at least the time frame of what's going on in this film. So ultimately I did find myself a bit disappointed with the Cloverfield paradox. It wasn't really what I was expecting it to be. It started off really promising and really entertaining with its suspenseful goings on with different dimensions and things of the really vast and cool sci-fi nature. But then it just stops doing a lot of that stuff and just goes into this generic, I'm lost in space, try to find your way home type of movie that we've seen a million times now. So while if you are a fan of the Cloverfield films, I would say check it out just for continuity's sake in case they do decide to reference anything which actually happened throughout the course of this movie. If you're not a big fan of those movies, it's not really a thing to see unless you're big into space films. But guys, those are my thoughts on the Cloverfield paradox. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Did you like it as much as I did? Did you hate it more than I did? Let me know. Like, share, comment, and subscribe once again if you so choose. I appreciate it immensely. And as always, man, people, my name is Nick Pell. And once again, keep on watching.